Okay, good morning, everyone. Touche. My name is Mark Cohen, and I am incredibly proud to welcome you all here to the storied Seneca Valley High School. We are an IB, International Baccalaureate World School, and we're really incredibly proud of the academic accomplishments of our students, their accomplishments on the sports field, their accomplishment on the stage. We have probably the best choir program that the state has to offer. And we have just some of the most amazing, well-rounded, well-spoken, wonderful kids that the citizens of Montgomery County have to send to our schools. And so I felt it was my responsibility to start off my welcome by sharing with you all how incredibly proud we are of the Germantown community and how grateful we are to our superintendent and to our Board of Education for all that they've done over the many years that the conversation about modernization of schools has been going on. All they've done to show their support and their encouragement for our community. And so I know that's not the sum and total of this press conference, but I felt a responsibility to say formally on behalf of the Germantown community, thank you for everything that you've done. I also want to make sure that I thank a couple of people. Very specifically, I want to thank Kevin David, who is my partner in crime, our PTSA president. Kevin is here and has been a fierce advocate for the students in the community, and he's a regular presence everywhere he goes. He sings the praises of the education that our kids in Montgomery County get, and he advocates on behalf of our students. And so I want to thank him for being here. I already referenced a thank you to our Board of Education, to our county council for their support in all that they've done to publicly support Montgomery County education. I want to thank our building services crew, and I know that's an odd group to thank at a press conference for CIP, but my issue has always been providing the best, most environment most conducive to the education and learning of our kids, and they do an amazing job keeping this building going, even despite, as I know some of you walked in, you probably saw the giant puddles in the corner, and you may have seen in our auditorium hallway trash cans that are set up to receive the water from the rain. Even in spite of that, they've created an environment where the kids and the teachers just don't miss a beat. They are still getting an amazing education, one that I am proud of, and I hope that you're all proud of. So with that, welcome to Seneca Valley, and I have the honor and the privilege to introduce to you all somebody who probably doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'd like to introduce to you all from our Board of Education, the president of our Board of Education, Ms. Pat O'Neill.
Good morning and welcome to Seneca Valley High School. My colleagues on the Board of Education and I are very excited to be here. It's very appropriate that we are at Seneca Valley because it is sort of it epitomizes the needs here in Montgomery County and the future growth that the new Seneca Valley will help to take care of. I'd like to introduce my colleagues on the Board of Education. I'm joined today by Dr. Judy Daca, by Ms. Jill Ortman-Faust, Mr. Phil Kaufman. Mike Durso, Vice President of the Board, is attending a statewide school safety meeting. He is chair of that committee, and so he is there, and others may be fighting the traffic through the rain. But they're all here in spirit. I'd like to tell the superintendent that we are pleased to receive his capital improvement budget, FY 2017 to 2022. I know that a lot of hard work went into this capital improvements program, and I know that there were very tough decisions. The needs here in Montgomery County are tremendous. Here's the bottom line. We have to do something to address our growing space needs in Montgomery County. Since 2007, our school district has grown by 18,700 students. That's enough to fill 25 elementary schools. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources or the land to build 25 new schools. So through a combination of classroom additions, school replacement projects, we have increased capacity at many schools. We've also opened several new schools. Since 2007, we've added 14,000 seats, mainly in the elementary schools. And while this has helped to address our increase in student enrollment, it's not enough. You can look at our increase in enrollment, and as you can see, the problem is not going away. Over the next 6 years, we project that the enrollment in MCPS will grow by more than 11,000 students, and much of that growth will be moving on to our secondary schools. I like to equate it to an army on the move. That army is marching on to middle school and high school. Over the next 10 years, enrollment in middle schools and high schools will grow by 10,000 students. While growth in the elementary schools is slowing down at the moment, we know that births are increasing right now, so that in a few years down the road, that elementary student enrollment will grow again and grow very quickly. Mr. Bowers has put together an aggressive CIP that looks to address our current space needs while addressing what we know will be the increase in our high school and middle schools. It also addresses much-needed infrastructure upgrades. As you will see, he has taken a big picture look at the district's capacity needs instead of just focusing on 202 schools. He's looked at it holistically. The county has invested generously in our capital needs, but they can't do it alone. We appreciate the support of the county council and the county executive, but we know that we will need additional support from the state of Maryland. While we've worked on this the past 2 years, we haven't been successful, but we will keep on trying. Before I turn the program over to Mr. Bowers, my board colleagues and I want you to know that we will hold a work session on November 5th. We will hold 2 public hearings on November 9th and 12th. Starting tomorrow, folks can sign up to testify at our public hearings, and we will take final action on November 16th and then pass it on to the county council and the county executive. With that, I would like to turn the podium over to one of our strongest partners, Mr. Craig Rice, Chair of the Education Committee of the County Council.
Well, thank you very much to Ms. O'Neill and for her steadfastness in terms of fighting for our school children in Montgomery County. I want to thank the Board of Education and our superintendent. I also want to give a special shout out to Principal Cohen, who remains a staunch advocate for members of our Germantown community, specifically here at Seneca Valley High School. I also want to recognize the great work of Kevin David, who's been testifying in front of the Montgomery County Council for many, many years about the needs of the revitalization of Seneca Valley High School, and we appreciate your dedication to the students here and to the greater Germantown community. Let me say this. It is clear that we have reached a breaking point. And this breaking point is one in which we can no longer hold our schools together any longer, relying upon the great work of our building service staff and our principals and teachers to creatively try to come up with ways in which we can meet the needs that, quite frankly, haven't been met at our state level. It's been very frustrating that we continue to travel to Annapolis hand in hand with our Board of Education, our teachers, and education advocates to demand that we need to do better for our children, to only be turned away empty-handed. It is important for us that we as a county council make sure that we are meeting the needs of our education community. However, we cannot do it alone. You heard the president of the board specifying that we have specifically asked for legislation that would help us to address these needs, but unfortunately that legislation has not been supported. I can tell you that that can no longer continue. We must be fierce advocates and demand that justice be done for our children. And I think that when you look at the economic development focus that our governor has espoused, he has left one key component out of his strategy. We can certainly talk about a Secretary of Commerce no longer labeled as the Department of Business and Economic Development, but the reality is that one of the main drivers of economic development is our schools. And if we are not funding and supporting our schools, we are losing ground when it comes to economic development opportunities. I will be having a meeting with Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford within the month, and I will be specifically asking for them to allocate additional money when it comes to school construction, because it is not fair for us to ask the Montgomery County taxpayers alone to shoulder the burden of making sure that we continue to meet the needs of our school system without state support. The Montgomery County Council continues to and will be supportive as much as we possibly can within our bonding capacity and spending affordability guidelines of supporting our school system, which is the right thing to do. We ask our state to step up and do the right thing as well. This is a no-brainer for us. We continue to be the economic engine of the state, and we can only do so in firmly supporting our school system. I want to applaud the superintendent for his strategic look at how he allocated funding for our CIP. Let me just say this, that when you look at a person who lives in the Northwest cluster, whose child, one attended Matsunaga and now is at Kingsview, and one still at Matsunaga, which used to be the largest elementary school not only in Montgomery County, but one of the largest elementary schools in the state of Maryland, that I see that transition that the president talked about. I also applaud the vision and understanding that as we refocus our efforts and look at Clarksburg and understanding pushing back Northwest a year, those are the kinds of decisions that are tough but need to be made. And so I really want to, again, say thank you for really looking at this from a comprehensive perspective in terms of what's going to meet the needs of our kids. This is not political. This is about what is going to be the best for our Montgomery County residents. And so I'm very pleased to work hand in hand with our superintendent, with our Board of Education, and all of the Board of Education members to make sure that we are doing the best for our school students. That is the responsible thing to do, and I look forward to working with you through this next budget cycle. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to start off with a couple general comments. One, I want to thank Craig Grice and the County Council. You're going to hear me talk a little bit about funding, certainly, and the fact is that the council has stepped up and has helped us fund many projects, and so I'm going to get into a little more detail about, how much funding, how many classrooms have actually been built, and if we're on schedule, how many more classrooms are going to be built to keep up with the growth. Obviously, you're going to continue to hear about the impact of growth on the needs of the capital budget needs of the school system. I also want to mention, before I go on, we obviously were strategic in having this event at Seneca Valley High School. I know the cluster is disappointed that we didn't move the schedule up a year for the modernization. I'm here to say we cannot, the numbers just didn't work. We can't delay it any longer. And there are other schools like it, but this school has obviously waited too long, cannot wait any longer. It's been delayed far too many years. And again, I commend the principal and the staff here for the work that they've done to maintain this building. Part of my comments are going to be also looking at how we have to maintain all of our other buildings and what's really required, and putting more money into that until we can actually reach the point of being able to deal with our RevX projects. But again, I think this is an example and a reason why there are different components, different pieces of the plan, and we need to move forward with all of them. My budget recommends $1.72 billion, and we made it easy just to remember. It's a $172 million increase. So the numbers are close just so I could remember it. So, but I want to put that in perspective. So it seems like a large increase. It's actually a little less than what we had looked at over the last couple of years. What we did not do in this CIP that we've done for the last couple of years is we did not assume that the state bonding bill is going to be approved. In the past couple of years, we did that, and then when the CIP actually got to the county council, they had to make a lot of difficult decisions at the last moment because we didn't get, the bonding bill wasn't approved and we didn't get those additional funds. This doesn't mean, and this shouldn't be any sign that we're not still pushing that bonding bill and pushing for other ways to get the additional state aid that you've already heard about. We have said for a number of years, we don't believe we get our fair share. Montgomery County receives about 12 or 13% of state funding support for public school construction. We have 17, getting closer to 18% of the students, yet we only get 12 to 13% of the funding. And we're by far the fastest growing jurisdiction in the state. And so growth is impacting us much more than other jurisdictions. And it's that growth that we're struggling with in terms of building all the new seats, the additional seats that we need. Now, there was some information shared. We've grown by 18,000 students, a little over 18,000 students since 2007. Again, through the support of the board and the council, we've actually built 14,000 more seats. So we've not been able to keep up completely, but it's not that we haven't been trying to build more seats. And actually over that period of time, we've maintained about the same number of relocatable classrooms. Our goal a number of years ago was actually to reduce that number further. And we don't see us making much progress in reducing it too quickly, but we're not growing in that number. And if you compare us to some of the other jurisdictions in the area that haven't kept up with growth, they have many, many more relocatable classrooms than we do. So again, the county has worked together to try to figure out how to keep up with this increase in enrollment. I think there's about 12,000 additional seats that will be built if in fact this CIP is approved. So again, you can see the growth. It's about 10,300, 10,400 more students over the 6-year period. And as Mrs. O'Neill said, almost all of those are at the secondary level. So it's just a tremendous impact that we're going to see. This CIP only begins to touch on the needs that we're going to have beyond that 6-year period when the growth starts really impacting these schools. Now, we do have more capacity projects, and so you'll begin to see that there are more additions coming on board at the secondary level. There's actually 3 middle schools, Ebrook, Lee, Pyle, and Tacoma Park, that we're recommending additions, and 1 at Whitman High School. Now, currently CIP, there are also additions, 1 being built at West and North Bethesda. So again, we're beginning to see the impact in the middle schools. Our middle schools, fortunately, we had some additional capacity in places. We actually had some schools that seemed to be underutilized. Lee was one of them that we were, a number of years ago saying, they're down to 500 students. Now, the enrollment is taking off in the Down County Consortium. And so those middle schools are filling up in the Down County Consortium. The elementary schools are also. So you can see capacity projects. There's 5 more capacity projects here. This is a result of the Down County Consortium, the lower portion of the Down County Consortium, study that we had done. This is my recommendation is to add capacity at these schools to address with the needs. We had in the approved CIP for this year capacity projects for the northern half or the upper portion of the Down County Consortium for elementary schools. There was a change. There were actually some schools that were slated to get additions. We've actually pulled them back because their enrollment now just doesn't justify it. We, in fact, last year made the decision that we were going to change the capacity rating at our elementary schools, particularly those with the focus schools with the lower class sizes in kindergarten 1 and 2, because we haven't been able to actually meet the class size targets. So we've actually upped them to reflect how we're actually staffing our schools. So that increased the capacity at some of those schools. And so we've actually pulled back on a couple of those projects. I know folks are going to be disappointed. But again, as you look at this, there's only a limited amount of dollars to go around, and we had to set the priorities on how we're going to make the determination of which schools are going to get the additional the additions put on. I wanted to flag one piece there. A number of years ago for an elementary school, they were eligible for an addition if they were at 92 or above. It was basically 4 classrooms over capacity. Because of the difficult budget times, County Council Board of Education had to increase that to 150. I've actually reduced that to 125, so that is one change that I've made in this budget. So the cutoff we're looking at is put forward with schools elementary schools that are over by more than 125 students, and so that's been recommended. You can also see Greencastle is another school that we've added to the capacity projects. Just a couple footnotes on capacity. Clarksburg is still growing, so we actually have to build another elementary school in the Clarksburg cluster. Again, I just want to commend the board and the council for how we've approached addressing capacity in an area like Clarksburg. I know some may be frustrated that students have to be we have to set boundaries and then open another school and then change those boundaries. And I think we've done it with some vision to make the least impact on families. But when an area is growing as dramatically as Clarksburg, there's just some of those changes that have to be made. And so a new middle school is opening this year. One of the recommendations to the board are the boundaries for this new middle school. In terms of the capacity projects, this building, we are recommending to actually increase to 2,400. That's a dramatic increase in the capacity and enrollment of this school. What we've recommended, the board has discussed, is that this will relieve overcrowding in Northwest Cluster and the Clarksburg Cluster. So, and I'm pleased to say that I am retiring July 1, and I won't have to be part of the boundary process because setting boundaries for high schools is very, very challenging and difficult. And so I'll sit on the sidelines and follow the news, maybe even attend some of the meetings. But again, it is this longer-term vision that we have and the longer-term planning that we do. Sometimes people say we don't do good planning. I'm obviously biased and think we do a good job, and people don't necessarily see it. But again, part of that is we can't build anticipating 6 or 7 or 8 years from now there's going to be we have to build for what we see, and this is that 6-year period. And so, but these capacity projects related to the modernizations are critical. I think there's 180 additional classrooms, 4,000 seats in these RevX projects. And that's why the expansion piece of it, RevX, the expansion piece is so critical. They're not just revitalizing, modernizing older buildings. They're actually building more capacity. And so most of our revitalization projects have additional capacity to deal with the growth. On the chart here, you can see how much of the budget is for increase capacity. And what we've actually done there is we've taken out the expansion piece of the RevX and put it into the capacity piece to try to show the budget is, the primary focus is to build these additional seats, 12,000 more seats over the next 6 years to deal with the kids who are already here, and then those that are coming in the next 6 years. But the RevX piece is important. We've delayed the RevX schedule a couple of times. And again, it is important for us to maintain the schedule and not delay it further. I did want to talk about the third piece of this, which are the county-wides or investing in this critical maintenance and infrastructure. Again, with the support of the board and the council, we've greatly increased the amount of money that's been put in the budget for our HVAC program, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning program. There's an increase of $30 million more in this CIP than the previous CIP. And it's not really enough. The first 2 years, I think, are $30 million in each of the first 2 years. 30 and 20. So made some late decisions. So we've had to pare back a little bit. I know when they presented it was 30 and 30, I think. So we've had to pare it back a little bit. We've actually increased the amount for roofs in this CIP. I think it's an $8 million increase. We've gotten a little bit behind schedule on roofs. Again, was a priority in the county. We put a lot more money into it. We've tried to keep up with it. We actually are on about a 24-year replacement cycle right now, which is a little too long. It should be closer to 20. There are some other key programs. So it's almost $50 million increase of the $172 million are for these key countywide projects. This is important. PLAR is important, planned life cycle asset replacement. The board asked for more money last year. The council approved it. The first 2 years do and have some numbers that were almost $4 million higher a year than they were previously. That's an important program. So these county-wides are important. So as we have to wait longer to renovate, modernize our older buildings, we've got to put in the money for the maintenance. There are some other recommendations that have been made in terms of, again, looking at a county approach. We have some areas of the county that are growing fairly dramatically. We're trying to look at each of them. So I talked a little bit about the Down County Consortium. The growth is going to begin to get into the middle schools. We're going to have some high school challenges in the Down County Consortium. In BCC, we've done a number of things. We obviously have an addition, BCC High School, a new school in the BCC area. So we're dealing with that. Walter Johnson is a challenging area. Everybody knows it probably has more growth. All of our elementary schools in that area are basically maxed out at 740. We're actually recommending Ashburton be larger than that. And I am recommending the Ashburton project be moved up a year. There are only two, I think, that we've actually moved up. It's Ashburton, and I think McAuliffe is the other one. But this is one that's urgent. But I've also recommended a roundtable discussion for the Walter Johnson cluster to take a look at the capacity issues and the needs in that cluster, and look at a K-12 review and recommendation to come out. Quite honestly, the council put a placeholder in play in this past summer for the high schools in the cluster. We were looking at an option of making it 3,200 at Walter Johnson. I wasn't ready to do that. We may end up there. I just thought we needed to take a look at some other options before we decided Walter Johnson is going to be 3,200. And so there are some different things to look at. Again, it's high school, middle school, elementary school in the cluster. We know that we're going to eventually need another elementary site, at least one in the area as the growth starts coming in White Flint and some of the other developments in the area. So again, we're looking at this throughout the county. There's lots of challenges everywhere. One of the other areas in terms of that we have some challenges is in the Gaithersburg cluster. We did a lot of studies. We did feasibility studies. I've actually recommended looking beyond just the boundaries of Gaithersburg High School because a lot of the growth that's coming into the cluster are really, so one piece of it is on the west side of 270, which is the Crown Farm, which is all the growth that's coming into Rosemont. And then the other piece is the Shady Grove Master Plan area, which is feeding into Washington Grove. And so I thought we needed to take a look at tri-county, a tri-cluster, to look at are there some other opportunities as we look at this, because this provides us with one of the challenges we're facing in the county. We have a lot of longer-term development plans, and how do we, and there's frustration in the county that we only look at the 6 years. And so how do we look at some of those out years? Because we know there's more growth in the Shady Grove West Plan, so it's not just what's going to happen, what's happening at Crown Farm, and Crown Farm is just taken off. But the Shady Grove Master Plan, that area is just taking off right now. It's just starting. When you look at other areas, again, the White Flint area, the number 8,000 more units I think are going to be built in that area. But it's going to be a long time that it's going to take them. But how do we as a community and elected officials let all of our citizens know we are really looking at the long-term vision, and how do we prepare for all of that? So that includes sites that may be needed, and how do we get the sites, or how do we get the sites back that were previously school sites? So this is the longer-term vision of development and planning that we're doing with the board, with the council, the county executive's office, and the planning board to prepare for the future. Just in finishing, I think that what I've recommended is I think a reasonable ask in terms of the increase, in terms of what the needs of the system are. And we could have, obviously, we believe if the state did come through, we have a lot of shovel-ready projects that can be built. And I think, again, that goes to the planning that our board and the council does in anticipating and getting ready. So if we're able to be successful, getting additional bond authority through the state, we feel we have a number of shovel-ready, we do have a number of shovel-ready projects that we're ready to move on and build and deal with the capacity issues in the county. So again, I want to thank all of our elected officials for all of their support. I especially want to thank the PTA for being great partners in all of this work and in terms of providing leadership for all of the PTAs in the county. I know they've been very involved with PTA clusters and individual schools in dealing with specific needs and specific interests and challenges and approaching this from a countywide effort. And so I really want to thank our PTA partners for their leadership in this. So thank you very much. I apologize. I was there going on and on and on, and I forgot the last line, which is, Francis, please come up and I have to look at the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. I'm pleased to be here to represent the Montgomery County Council of PTAs, our 192 PTAs across the county. As MCPS student enrollment continues to grow through birth, immigration, new families, and new communities, our schools must grow to accommodate the increasing number of students. There is not much room to debate about the number of students that are in our schools or the need to provide classroom space for them. So we thank Interim Superintendent Mr. Bowers for his thoughtful consideration into this recommended CIP and all the MCPS staff that works tirelessly to come up with this plan. We realize that it's a very tough decision prioritizing the various RevX capacity and countywide maintenance projects and doing that on a limited budget. For every school project that is put on the schedule, there are many others who are still waiting, and this means for all the thousands of students who will move into new spaces, there are many still who will be in portables and crowded classrooms. As MCC PTA, we maintain that schools should be safe, modern, comfortable, and welcoming environments for students and staff to facilitate learning. This year, we hold among the priorities for MCC PTA to support county and state-funded school capital budgets for school construction and capital improvements. We will continue to work with our General Assembly delegation to advocate at the state level for Montgomery County to receive operating and construction funds from the state in proportion to MCPS's need, growth, and size. As Mr. Bowers mentioned, our student enrollment represents about 17% of the state public school population, but we receive less than that in proportion of the state funds for constructions. We will continue to urge the county council to recognize that our aging and overcrowded buildings have reached a point of crisis, including an unacceptable number of relocatable classrooms, and there's no choice but to increase funds for school construction, and I don't think we disagree on that point. When our schools are overcrowded, there are more children sharing space that is not designed to accommodate them. There are more children per class, which impacts teaching and learning. There are more children in the cafeteria, lunch shifts are extended. There are more children using the core spaces such as media centers and gymnasiums. There's just more children everywhere. Many think that the emphasis on overcrowded and aging schools and the need for revitalization, expansion, and increasing capacity is about building pretty new schools. But it's more than that. It's more important than that. It's about giving our children the safe, adequate, and modern spaces for education that they need. Councilmember Rice and President Patricia O'Neill joined us last night for MCC PTA Presents on CIP. There, Mr. Rice emphasized that education is key in Montgomery County, continuing to be competitive as a county for businesses and families to choose to locate and to live here. We hope that this acknowledgement of the importance of education is demonstrated in the CIP as it moves forward to the Board of Education and funded through the county and state budgets. Thank you.
I think now that wraps up our press conference today, so thank you very much, everybody. And I really do want to call out our staff for their great work, James and Bruce and all of their staff for everything they've done.